Welcome, everyone, to the August 2018 New York Alternative Investment Roundtable monthly call. I am Robert Atkinson of Mirae Asset Securities USA, and the call's moderator. We are very excited to welcome Nick Mistry, President of Active Victim, and Chad Wilbur, Master Instructor of Active Victim. By way of introduction, Nick is a longtime business owner and entrepreneur. He is chairman of the board at Mistry Family Office in India and president of the DreamWorks Media Company in the United States. In addition to Active Victim, Nick has created several other burgeoning brands, including Cure Me Life and AutoTax. Nick is a respected consultant and strategist who regularly works with established businesses as well as budding entrepreneurs. His strategies help companies and individuals meet specific goals, such as making the move to an IPO, achieving optimum working systems in their organizations, and other desired actions. In leadership and management, he creates unique principles-based ecosystems within companies and trains managers to become leaders of the next generation. He further encourages a new generation of entrepreneurs by offering design strategies pro bono through RamenWorks. Chad Wilbur is a master instructor with a long history of self-defense training. He is a 6th degree black belt in Taekwondo and is a certified trainer in Krav Maga and Haganah, ground survival and tactical knife fighting, and active shooter defense and carjacking response. He is also an NRA certified firearms instructor. In addition to his work with Active Victim's Master Instructor, Chad teaches martial arts to children and adults in Tallahassee, Florida. Both he and his students are frequent participants in national and international competitions. So before we go any further, I just want to say that I had a chance to meet both Nick and Chad, and I recognize that this curriculum, this topic, is quite a bit different from the topics we've handled before, but felt that it was sufficiently imperative that we address it, that folks in the audience, that members and other members of the public might find this topic to be of great interest. Before we go any further, and I introduce Nick and Chad, and by the way, there's someone in the background who I think is, if you could please put your phones on mute or refrain from moving in the background, because someone is wrestling a little bit there, if you don't mind. Before I do introduce Nick and Chad, I do want to thank our sponsors, without whose support this would not be possible. Our sponsors include Alston Bird, BNY Mellon, Deloitte, Ferential Systems, Baker Tilly, Bloomberg, Grant Thornton, New Mountain Capital, Benesch, and Kaya. So, the places change, the numbers change, but the choice of weapons remain the same. In the United States, people who want to kill a lot of other people most often do it with guns. Public mass shootings account for a tiny fraction of the country's gun deaths, but they are uniquely terrifying because they occur without warning in the most mundane places. Most of the victims are chosen not for what they have done, but simply for where they happen to be. So, Nick Mistry, what is an active shooting incident?
Hi, Bob. First of all, I would like to thank you for the great introduction that you have given to me, Chad, as well as the company. Starting by what an active shooting incident is. So the FBI pronounces an active shooting incident where 3 or more people die of such an attack categorically, and where these incidents take place in an enclosed area. However, these definitions don't stand true every single time, and they keep on changing as we see more and more incidents. And as you mentioned, there is absolutely no place that it cannot occur. Everybody is vulnerable. It's just about time when this incident may happen in our own facilities.
Okay, so what would you say the effect of an active shooting incident is?
Well, an active shooting incident has, it's a lose-lose situation for everybody. People lose their lives. The next of kin lose their loved ones. There are permanent losses to families, which are, of course, irreparable in nature when you lose a loved one. On the business side, the businesses get sued. They lose talent pressure. They cannot replace the people that once used to work for them if they are injured or if they happen to lose their life. And there is also a huge cost of compensation that needs to be paid out to them in case of such scenarios, which these days the courts are pretty fierce in awarding such compensations. And they also have to spend a lot of cost in rebuilding their own facility. They have to spend a lot amount of money to also counsel the people who have gone through such attacks. And then the desirability of people to again keep working at the same place where they've seen bloodshed and such grueling atmosphere further goes down. So there is absolutely nothing positive in it. It's only got negative effects to it.
And obviously everyone that's on this call can relate to, or at least in theory, hopefully only ever, appreciate the horror that an active shooting incident might bring with it.
Yeah.
In conversations that I've had with you, you've also educated me on the duties and responsibilities that employers have. I believe it's under OSHA to protect.
Yeah. Yes, that is correct. So not many people know about this, and it's time that every other business knows about it. So what OSHA general guidelines say is that every business in the United States that employs people needs to give them regular active shooter training, failing which they would be liable if at all an incident happens at their facility. So it is there as a guideline, but recently, not even recently, some 5 to 6 years back from that time, there have been huge compensations that have been ordered by the jury. There have been outside court settlements based on this very condition. So it's no longer a guideline. Once a law, it becomes a law once a judgment is passed on that particular guideline. So for example, if you look at the Sandy Hook incident, then $5.5 million were awarded per family by the honorable jury for that particular incident. If you compare Whole Foods in Pennsylvania, they ended up paying $32.5 million as compensation. If you look at Virginia Tech, they had to spend $8.8 million. And worse, very recently, where the Las Vegas shooting took place at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. So in this case, to get rid of this liability, MGM chose to sue the victims themselves. So the victims lost their loved ones, as well as ended up getting sued for themselves, as well. So it's a very sorry and a sad state to say.
I'm sorry, Nick. Just back up a second. Talk about that Las Vegas event. What was it? Could you repeat that, please? I'm not sure I understood.
Yeah. So what happened is that a lot of people lost their lives at the MGM. It's an MGM brand facility, right? Mandalay Bay.
Yes. Yes.
So and there were like 415 plaintiffs that sued MGM hotels. So to avoid all that, so just imagine the compensations that they would have to pay in front of a jury. So taking some sort of a step, they sued the victims instead, so that they sued them in federal court under some terrorism guideline, which is very obscure in law. But end of the day, it may be a case where these victims may not get compensation at all. But then MGM had to resort to such strategies. It's not fair as far as the victims are concerned.
Well, it sounds horrible. And just out of curiosity, with typical insurance policies that companies might have, what provisions of those insurance policies might cover such an incident?
Oh, the thing is that these days, these insurance companies have started preparing an active shooter insurance kind of thing, but our premiums and everything is pretty high. So for example, a training, if you have, then that would cost much less than what an active shooting incident would cost you. As far as insurance companies are concerned, they have developed some packages these days for covering these activities. But then, at the end of the day, insurance alone is not going to save you.
No. So, which brings us to the so-called common man. What can the common man do to protect himself, or what hope does the common man have in a situation like this?
Yeah, see, to be honest with you, at this time, we are just left to fend for ourselves, because we are being given a false hope of law enforcement protecting us. I mean, with all due respect to law enforcement, what actually happens is that the FBI average time for an active shooter incident is only 4 minutes, and no law enforcement can enter within 4 minutes and save everybody and then terminate or neutralize the active shooter. So for now, unless and until we have taken apt training from professionals, there is no other way to protect yourself, because the people who are right there only can save themselves. There is no other way that any third person would be able to save you. So law enforcement essentially is a false sense of security that is being given. So that is where the things are. So unless and until you get trained to behave in that exact situation, there is no other way out, unfortunately.
I've heard that 4-minute threshold described before. In fact, in the high school shooting down in Florida, I understand that it took roughly 4 minutes for the police to arrive. It does seem, though, that 4 minutes is really a very short amount of time. And so I have a hard time believing that on average, or the median amount of time that law enforcement arrives is 4 minutes. 4 minutes sounds like that's a blink. Although I know if I would imagine if you're being attacked, it would seem like an eternity.
Yeah, that is right. So victims have very less time to react. So unless and until they are trained, there is no way that law enforcement can save you. And even with the Parkland shooting that occurred, it's not only their estimations, but if you study we have conducted deep research on all this. So if you dig deep into the FBI reports on this, which were published in 2014-15, so their report states a timeline of 4 minutes. By the time it's all over, 4 minutes, the guy has already probably killed a dozen people and then committed suicide himself or herself already.
Okay. Nick, are there any legal provisions to an active shooter training program?
As far as the legal provisions go, as I mentioned before, there are these OSHA guidelines under which honorable courts are awarding stiff compensations to businesses for not training them. On the other hand, if you have done your part, if you have trained yourself, if you have trained your staff of your business, then that is so much that you can do. And then still, if something bad happens, then it's just, you cannot help it. But tomorrow, if at all this unfortunate incident happens at your facility, and if you have a training certificate from us or whoever you have received training from, then that would certainly hold water in the court of law, where they would easily be able to exhibit that, oh, we did our part, but there is absolutely nothing else that we could have done to prevent this. So there is a very good chance that these huge and stiff compensations that have been awarded, there is a very good chance that you would be able to nullify that aspect at least, if not more.
Okay. So until I met you, I never imagined that such training was available. What is the market for training right now? What types of service providers are out there? And maybe as you describe that, you could also give us an overview of what Active Victim, what your company does in this area.
Yeah, certainly. So as far as the training market goes currently, there is no formidable training per se available. What they do in the name of training is show you a couple of videos and they just expect you to behave as you have been shown in the video. There is no hands-on training, there is no real life training, there is no time training, all of which we do. There's nothing there. I mean, and some of the very established places, I wouldn't want to take names, but some very established places also do not have any kind of hands-on training which would really save their life. So it's a very grueling situation today. In spite of when we see a lot of deaths, still there is absolutely no training that is being provided. Even if some of the best places, they are told to throw scissors and paper knives and fire extinguishers at the attacker and just hope that your aim is too good to disarm his weapon by throwing an extinguisher at that particular person. So there is no formidable training available in the market today, and that is where Active Victim comes in. So as a company, we are an award-winning company. We have won an award this year for Entrepreneur of the Year for path-breaking service to the nation for this particular brand of ours. So we have trained hundreds of individuals and businesses with our training, and we employ highly motivated and ex-servicemen to the likes of the military, the SWAT, and other highly reputable organizations to conduct our training programs. So here's the thing, Bob. So people and talk hosts came on CNN and all of these other popular networks. They talked a lot, they increased their ratings, and they just went away. Nobody did anything about it. People kept on dying in spite of all these candlelight marches and the analysis by experts on these talk shows. But we at Active Victim, we decided to make a difference to humanity. We stood up, we took up the challenge, and we designed the program.
Very interesting. So let's loop Chad into this conversation. Chad, you have a very extensive background in martial arts. To what extent, how is that background, or how is that background related to the type of training that you might give at Active Victim to employees?
Well, the training that we've received has been from the Israeli Special Forces. So first of all, the curriculum that we teach is real. It's effective and it works. And most importantly, it's easy to pick up. We always say anybody from a housewife to a Homeland Security officer can take the course and pick up the disarms and the response strategies. But I think what sets us aside is that it's very effective, and it's to the point and to the detail. So it's not like can just be taught to military personnel or police officers. This program can be taught to the common person.
So let me just delve a little bit more into this topic. When you and I spoke face to face, we talked about I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Krav Maga.
Krav Maga, yes, Krav Maga.
Krav Maga. Okay. So let's be frank here. Someone walks in with a firearm, okay, and you don't have a firearm. You're not expecting to be confronted by this criminal. How does any training in the martial arts or any overview of self-defense prepare you to defend this guy off, to avoid being harmed in any way? What is it about these disciplines that might be useful to a potential victim?
Well, really, in kind of a short answer, it gives you a plan. So it's whether that plan is, if something was to happen, to evacuate. When you walk into a building, you should know how many exits there are in the building. If you're in a crowded area, you don't want to stand in the middle of the crowd. You want to, be on the outside. Details like that. We give also a security plan to each facility. So we set up like a safe room and a response center at each facility. But really, to answer your question, it gives you a plan. So I know if something happens, I know how to run correctly and evacuate correctly. Or if I can't evacuate, where do I go to hide? And last case scenario would be to actually fight back.
When you and I had a conversation, you said something to me that kind of stuck, and that was, and I guess this gets back to Krav Maga. This particular discipline teaches you to use everything and anything that's available. And one of the things you said to me that's, again, stuck in the front of my brain was trying to disarm the criminal, maybe by yelling. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that might be, that approach, again, for someone who really doesn't have in-depth training in martial arts? How can this be helpful?
Well, unfortunately, you have to fight violence with violence. So if it is time to disarm, an attacker and take their firearm, you have to do it aggressively, and it has to be, to the point. And that's where muscle memory kind of takes over, where, with this training, in the continued training, your body should go into autopilot instead of what we call shock mode. So the people that do not have a plan and do not have any training, they're going to go into shock mode and go into a paralyzed state, and they will not be able to react. So, with this type of training, whether it's, as I'm disarming, aggressively, I'm using every detail that I can do to, unfortunately damage the person and get to safety. So it's got to be, kind of to the point real quick.
Well, two thoughts come to mind when I think about this type of training. One, it sort of reminds me of the training that you get when you get onto an airplane, right? And the flight attendants make signals, and they show they point out the card that's in the compartment right ahead. That's one. The second is CPR training. I think I've been trained. I've been around a while, so I think I've probably gone to maybe 4 or 5 classes in my business career. I kind of remember how to do it, but I may not be prepared to spring right into action. It may take me a second to kind of get warmed up. So I want to go back to a word you use, muscle memory, okay? To be able to achieve muscle memory, how often should you be trained in these skills?
So, we like to, our program, we come back 3 times a year. So we're not just going to see you one time and then, disappear. We're going to have ongoing training. I always tell people it's kind of like staff meetings. We have staff meetings, whether you do it weekly or monthly. At least once a month, part of your staff meeting should be an element out of that active victim program that you train with. So whether it's, 1 month how to evacuate correctly, the next month it may be how to hide correctly, and the next month it may be how to disarm correctly. But there needs to be active training going on, continual training going on, and not just a one-time show. Okay, so Nick, let me just circle back to you.
Yeah.
The programs that you've either conducted or currently have in place with companies, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the types of companies you've worked with before, what the right size is for this type of training. How often, is it one size fits all? Again, I'm just throwing a name out there. Let's say it was a company that had, tens of thousands of employees or versus maybe a couple of hundred. How is the program, how would you suggest institutionalizing the program at the company?
Yeah, so how that works is that we generally, if it's a fairly small size company, say having less than 50 employees, then we would go and train all of these employees in batches of 25. So that is how the program is designed. But the program is also adept to smaller company sizes of having like 10 to 15 employees as well. When you move to larger institutions, what we do is it is practically not possible and feasible for the companies to train tens and thousands of employees. So what we do is we establish a crisis team within that particular group of employees. So we take tentatively 10% of the employees of that caucus. So if there's like 10,000 employees, we would train close to 10% of those employees to behave in a manner and design a strategy that would help them in the facility. And also the beauty of this training is that it is conducted right on site, where employees work every day, so they know where they are. They are not new to the situation. They are not new to the surroundings, and they can act very abruptly and very aptly as soon as such incidents happen. And I would just like to stretch more on the muscle memory part of this thing. So when we come back 3 times a year, the basic curriculum remains the same. We add a lot of other curriculum to it, which benefits them in general as well, which I'm sure Chad can elaborate better.
Go ahead, Chad. Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, so our first course when we come in is usually a 1-day, 5-hour course. With that, we'll do, we have 3 pillars within our program. The first pillar is awareness. The second pillar is going to be the response strategy, and the third pillar is the defense strategy. So within that 5-hour course, we'll start with a PowerPoint presentation that reviews the details of the active shooter response. We also do medical training, first responder training. Seeing as law enforcement is going to take some time to get there, we'll do some tourniquet practice, and then we have enhanced medical training on some of our deeper courses, chest seals, things like that, if need be. And then we go into the actual, everybody knows it as the run, hide, fight. Really review the evacuation process correctly, where to go when you're outside the building, and what to do when law enforcement, comes in, because that's a huge part of it. And obviously how to hide correctly, the difference between concealment and cover. And then I think what sets us aside is the actual fight part of it, the actual disarms, where we show them the active disarms of a long gun or a pistol or knife. And then we review different doorway scenarios, hallway scenarios, open room scenarios. So in that 5-hour course, we have quite a bit of details that we review. Our second package is a 2-day course, and that just takes everything that we just talked about and intensifies it a little bit with extensive training on the run, hide, fight, reviewing a little bit more, putting them under a little bit more stress so they know what to do in that heat of the moment. We're going to also review their facility with a threat assessment. So we're going to walk through their building inside and out, and give you pros and cons on your security system there. Obviously, we set up that crisis team, and then we also have firearms training. So if a facility can, their employees can carry concealed, we want to, train them properly on what to do if they are concealed carrying. So we have an extensive firearms training package that we do with them. It also includes a Florida concealed permit if they don't have it. And we go deep into the hand-to-hand scenarios, stress drills, carjacking response, anti-kidnapping. So it's, we take it from, I want to say, a basic 5-hour course all the way up, to a very extensive 2-day course. And then we come back 3 times a year to review and give you new material.
So Chad, this sounds military grade almost. How does the common man, or how do common people adapt to this type of training?
Well, the scenarios itself are pretty basic. I mean, there's literally 4 moves that you're going to do to get the firearm away. So we're not packing in all this curriculum where you have to remember a bunch of stuff. It's really basic. It's really to the point. And like I said, anybody from a housewife to a Homeland Security officer can take the program. And 99% of the facilities that we do, they don't have any training in martial arts at all. So I think the the way that we've put together the disarms, you know, and make it effective and to the point where there's not a lot of memory involved has helped the common person pick up very, very quickly.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, gentlemen, where do you see this business going? Or, and when I say business, I don't necessarily mean your business, but I mean preparing people in general for not just active shooting events, but other forms of, I guess we could say, terrorism. What do you see the future like?
Yeah, certainly. So I would like to kick in here. So what happens is that when you get this type of training, then it remains with you forever. It is not like you can practice it only and only when you are being attacked in your office. So it stays with you. It helps you overcome all the fears that you have of being attacked or being apprehended at any point in time. So we also conduct anti-rape classes for women. So in that case, if she is attacked at any point in time, anywhere, then she would be able to protect herself. So the business, so-called, the enterprise value is huge. I believe each and every facility should have this type of training. OSHA also mandates it, and the people who fail to do it and something bad happens, then they end up closing businesses as well at times. So yeah, go on.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it strikes me that this, again, I'll call it an industry that you're firmly entrenched in. It seems to me that the evolution, I remember when disaster recovery was at its early stages, and most firms really didn't have it, and eventually it went from like a nice thing to have to a required thing to have. And so it seems to me, based on the laws of the land, particularly as promulgated by OSHA, that all employers really need to take a good hard look at this situation and take steps to prepare employees and safekeep the workplace. So
that's a very true point, Bob. I don't want to interject real quick. If you look at the school systems, you know, they do you know, fire alarm training. So they have, you know, drills that they send everybody through for, you know, fire alarms. And if you do research on that, there hasn't been any fatalities in a school fire. So, you know, businesses need to take this type of training like a fire, you know, escape training, and it just needs to be a regular thing in everybody's business, so they have that plan to take action.
So given the resources of your firm, what type of capabilities do you have to provide services? I see, and I just want to call everyone's attention to the slide in front of us. There is information, there's contact information about Active Victim. And as you can see, they have offices in New Jersey, Tallahassee, Florida, and Naples, Florida. So just out of curiosity, what type of reach do you have to provide services around the country?
Yeah, so the way it works is that we have 8 professional trainers on board who are ex-military, ex-SWAT. So these are highly professional and respected gentlemen of our ex-services. So the 5-hour program that we talk about can be conducted anywhere in the country. We just have a 5-hour window that we can just fly in with our weapons. When I say weapons, it means we have replicas of all real weapons. They are not real. We do not carry real weapons in any facility. It's not safe. So we have rubber and plastic weapons that we use to train. So we pretty much can fly anywhere in the country, given on a day. When the training is scheduled, it's just a day in and day out thing for us.
So As I said earlier when I described Chad's background, Chad, it looks like you have a very extensive background, or you have a very extensive background in martial arts, and I believe other members of the active victim team are similarly credentialed and experienced. So, Nick, let me ask you a question. If a company or an entity wanted to have a specialized curriculum created, because this really it goes beyond shootings, right? You talked about kidnapping, carjacking, things like that.
Anti-rape, for example.
Go ahead.
I'm saying anti-rape classes for that matter.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that for a second? What type of classes?
Yeah, so we have, so the basic curriculum, the 5-hour course is what it is to help you out in an active shooter scenario, which are the very, very basics that every citizen of the country should know, we believe, irrespective of where they are, where they work, doesn't matter, but every American should go through this kind of training because they will help, ultimately they can save their lives and lives of others. Apart from that, to answer your question, we have specialized curriculum that people request from us. So for example, a recent facility that we did, so they were pretty intrigued. They did not know that they had other options as well, where we could include them in a defense class, or where we could give them an anti-rape training, or we could give them an anti-carjacking training. So people also request specialized curriculums from us. So, and we are easily able to execute that because we have ex-military grade people working with us. So they are very, very well versed with all of this. It's common knowledge for them. But we have, the speciality of the training is that we have customized the military grade training and brought it to the common civilian, which is very, very important. Unless you do that, the participants would feel uncomfortable dealing in a way that military personnel are dealt with stiffness, because civilians are more kind of mellowed down humans where they are not that used to the stiffness that is there in the military. So we have customized all of these programs to suit the civilian needs, and there is a huge range of curriculum available with us that we can easily customize.
Okay, and I actually have a question from the audience here. So again, you're capable of providing customized services around the country. It's not limited to Florida or New York, the New York area.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely it is not. We would be, so we have another enhanced program also where we invite the 2-day program that Chad talked about, where we invite people for a couple of days to Tallahassee or Naples, where we have full-fledged gym facilities where we have all the necessary equipment and everything to train with, and then we have our gun ranges as well at these locations where we can go in and we can have an extensive firearms training and practice. So yes, it is pretty much, we can serve the entire continental United States.
So you also engage in firearms training?
Yeah, certainly, yes. So people who are interested, individuals who are interested in gaining advanced firearms training, military grade, we have, I mean, I'm sure Chad would know more about it. So we have these customized programs where we teach firearms training. So Chad is a certified instructor. So I'm sure Chad would be able to throw more light on it. Please go ahead, Chad.
Yes, especially with the firearms training, you know, we want to train people correctly, obviously in that field. You know, we don't want the one-time person that took a 30-minute concealed carry course and, you know, he's the one that's going to be protecting us. You know, you got to think about things. If I had to use that firearm, you know, what's behind the target that I'm shooting? You know, if I had to shoot at something, what's behind that target where I don't hit somebody, you know, by mistake? And all of this obviously happens in, you know, seconds. Standing at a target, just shooting a target at the range really doesn't put you into that stress. It doesn't put you into that environment that you're going to be at if you had to pull your firearm. So we kind of incorporated some stress drills and some advanced training with firearms, not just the, you know, basic concealed carry course.
Okay.
And to add to it, we have also developed a paintball kind of a course where these live strategies are going on, and when you hit somebody, it actually doesn't hit them in general, but it leaves a mark on them, so they know that where they've hit.
Very interesting. Nick, is there anything else that we should know about this topic in the brief time that we have available?
Yeah, no, all in all, what I would say is that irrespective of the law, if you care for yourself and your loved ones, you should get this type of training on a personal note. And for businesses, it is law of the land where you have to have this kind of training because ultimately they are also at loss. They get sued for millions of dollars. The average compensation that judges pay out is $5.5 million. So there are huge compensations attached to each of these incidents. So it would be in everybody's interest to get trained, get the certificate that we provide at the end of the training, and be safe, be responsible, act as a responsible citizen, act as a responsible business.
Okay. You know, as I said at the beginning, until I met Nick and Chad, I had no idea that, well, I certainly knew or understand that this is an issue around the country. Did not know that we had available to us resources like the ones offered at Active Victim to help prepare both companies and individuals to protect and defend themselves. So at this point, what I'd like to do is see if there are any other questions from the floor. Chad, do you have any other comments you'd like to make?
You know, I've been doing these courses obviously for years, and it was a struggle, you know, before trying to get companies involved where, you know, they would just say, yeah, well, you know, it's not going to happen to us. And, you know, they would kind of shun us away a little bit. And now it's just a topic that's almost in the news, you know, weekly. So just formulate a plan as a business owner. You got to take care of everybody at your facility and keep everybody safe. So we're here to help.
You know, I want to jump in and just ask a question. And I know this is beyond the scope directly of our audience, but I know there are certain states that have decided that, or they're considering allowing teachers to hold firearms. Just curious to get your view on that. I think Texas is one of them.
Yeah,
right. And there's
certainly, yeah, Chad, go ahead, please.
There's always, you know, pros and cons when dealing with firearms, and we take that into consideration. But in our eyes, it's the training that's going to help. If those people are allowed to carry concealed, they need to have an extensive training plan and continual training if there's going to be firearms involved. So it's extremely serious, you know, when dealing with firearms. So just know that we'll have our firearms package is very detailed and to the point.
Okay. Nick, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I mean, that is what we have been advocating a lot, that firearms kill people. So the intent behind using that firearm is very important. So the way we train you is we train the mind, the human mind, to use that firearm effectively and very responsibly. That is very important. Arming teachers with a 30-minute course is not going to help you at all if you don't have the kind of training. So if you train a resource officer or a teacher, and if that teacher is on a leave that day, then what would you do? Or if the teacher is far away from that particular place, a localized place where the attack is taking place. So these things are not a solution at all, we believe, because that the person who is right there can help themselves and others to save their lives. So there should be training to each of these people. So if there's a school, then teachers need to undergo such training and then given these firearms. So if somebody is not there, then people won't die. They will have a plan and they'll know how to escape, and if need be, then fight.
Yeah, you know, just a couple of facts that I've come across on this topic, which kind of blew my mind. One was that shooters often carry more than one weapon. I think in one case, one of the shooters was found to have carried at least 24. At least 168 of the mass shooters' weapons were obtained legally, and only 52 were obtained illegally. And I know this doesn't directly relate to what the services you provide, but I think it sort of speaks to the craziness of all this. And I guess we do have to incorporate this mindset, this training, like we did CPR, like we do when we get on a plane. We have to be aware of our environment all the time, and we can't take can't take our safety for granted. So I say this with all due respect, gentlemen. Unfortunately, this is a topic we can't avoid. We have to address, or we should address at least. So I do want to thank Nick Mistry, President of Active Victim, and Chad Wilbur, Master Instructor of Active Victim. Gentlemen, this has been a very interesting conversation. If there are any other questions, we'd like to entertain them at this point. I think as people can see at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat. So I have received a couple questions, but if there are additional ones, I'd like to present them to the floor as well. Nick, any closing comments? Chad, any closing comments?
Yeah, I would like to jump in. See, the thing is that with so much polarization in the country today, you never know who would turn a weapon on you. That can be a disgruntled employee. It can be some person who's having some mental condition. So there's absolutely no way that you would know or you would predict that this incident would not happen to your facility or it would not happen anywhere else. And we always think that the odds are against us, that it cannot happen to us. But look at the Waffle House shooting. Look at the newspaper agency, the Gazette shooting recently. I mean, who would have imagined that a place, such mundane places like Waffle Houses can have such incidents? And also that there is no negotiating point with these people. They come to kill. It's not like a robbery training where you hand over the money and the robber will not take your life. These people are essentially coming to kill you. There is no other motivation or no negotiating point with these guys. So unless you are trained, you will lose your life if something happens.
Okay. I am looking for some additional questions. I've been told by email that there are questions here. I don't see them. So if there are any additional questions, please send them to the room.
I will be happy to answer any questions. Please post them.
Yes, I've received an email from one of our listeners, but I don't have the question. I don't see it appearing on the in the chat, unfortunately. So if that individual wants to jump in, please do on the phone. Okay, Nick Mistry and Chad Wilbur of Active Victim, I do want to thank you for your time and your insights today. And I do want to remind everyone that their contact information is right in front of you. I would encourage you to think about what we've all heard. Indeed, it is very sobering. We should take it seriously. So their contact information is on the screen. By all means, please reach out to either Nick or Chad. So, folks, thanks for your time. Until next month, enjoy the rest of your summers. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.